Ku is a weird emo who loves to wander every night. During one of his walks, he meets a freaky vampire girl who offers to turn him into a vampire if he lets her suck him off. But he will have to fall in love with her or he will die in 1 year. The night he met her, Ku snuck out of the house to embody his hero Batman and watch over Tokyo. He'd been having trouble sleeping and thought a night on the town would do him good. While walking throughout the city, he searched online for a solution to his insomnia, and for some reason, all he saw was advice telling him to either speak to a shrink or get shit-faced drunk so he could pass out. Just then, he passed by a vending machine, and since he was more curious than a cat, he decided to buy a can of beer to see what all the fuss was about. Admittedly, he was afraid that he'd get caught. However, he still pushed forward, and the moment he pushed the bottom, a girl spoke up beside him. She pointed out that he didn't look old enough to drink, causing Ku to freak out and try to defend himself, but every word that came out of his mouth made him look guilty. When he tried to run, she grabbed his arm and asked if he thought she would believe such a lie when she was neither as dumb nor as stupid as the head of the Simpsons family. Visibly terrified, Ku swore he wasn't the type of kid who drank, and she assured him that she wasn't going to tell on him because she was no snitch. As they walked away together, she told him to let her help him, and explained that the only reason people struggled to sleep at night was because they were unsatisfied with how they spent their day. To prove her point, she pointed to 3 drunks sleeping on a bench and commented on how satisfied they looked, but Ku pointed out that they were just passed out drunk. Ignoring his words, the girl addressed the men, giving them high fives, much to Ku's surprise. When she began walking away, Ku followed her, asking if she knew the men, and she answered that it was her first time meeting them. Surprised, he asked how she could be so casual with strangers and told him with a smirk that it was nighttime, a time where people released their inhibitions so they could feel satisfied. And just then, the girl invites Ku to come over to her place. Surprisingly, this half-witted idiot agreed to go with her, ignoring every lecture that had been drilled into him concerning stranger danger. Upon getting to her apartment, the girl asked Ku to lie on the futon. Of course, he hesitated for all the right reasons, and the girl made it worse by removing her coat, which made him believe she wanted his cream. He then tried to leave, but she stopped him and assured him that all she was offering was a place to sleep. As they lay on the futon, Ku's mind was not at ease, but Miss I Won't Juggle Your Balls told him to calm down and close his eyes. Listening to her, he closed his eyes but only pretended to sleep, so she'd stop watching him like a hawk. A few moments later, the girl checked to see if he'd truly crossed over to dreamland, and when he didn't move or react, she grinned evilly and bit his neck. Ku remained still as she helped herself to his blood, and when she was done, she happily told herself that it was delicious. Finally, Ku sat up and foolishly asked what she'd done, surprising her as she'd been sure he was dead to the world. Seeing as she'd been caught, she tried to play it off as if she'd swatted a mosquito that had been on his neck. Ku pointed out that she had blood on her lips, so she came clean, admitting she was a vampire. Immediately, Ku asked if what she'd done would turn him into a vampire, and she told him that it wouldn't. However, she explained that for a human to become a vampire, they had to be in love with a vampire and allow them to drink their blood. After the words left her mouth, she started feeling embarrassed and refused to look at him for some reason. Later, they went out again, and after she'd helped herself to a can of beer, she asked if he had a girl he liked, and Ku admitted that he didn't, saying he didn't like girls.
You are gay.
So she told him there was nothing wrong with preferring sausages over fruit bowls. Ku assured her that that wasn't the case, so she floated a little into the air and asked how his first night out was. As Ku thought about how dull and pointless had been, she told him that he could continue staying up late until he felt satisfied with his day. In response, Ku asked her to let him fall in love with her, so she turned him into a vampire, saying he didn't want to continue living like an NPC. Shocked and mildly embarrassed by his words, she told him that she didn't want an offspring. However, she said all she wanted was his blood, and if he fell in love with her, she wouldn't be held responsible. She then introduced herself as Nazuna, and told her that his name was Ku. The following night, Ko snuck out again, but this time around, he couldn't find Nazuna, so he walked around hoping to spot her somewhere. After searching without any luck, he decided to circle back to his neighborhood. As he walked, it dawned on him that even if Nazuna sucked his blood that night, he wouldn't become a vampire because he wasn't in love with her yet. Just as he decided that he didn't have to meet up with her every time he was out, Nazuna landed on the electric pole beside him. While she was trying to look like a low-budget Itachi, she noticed Ko staring at her, so she jumped down and greeted him. Annoyed by her casual greeting, Ku asked where she'd been all night and revealed that he had been searching for her like she was the One Piece. Nazuna apologized for unintentionally ghosting him and explained that she had been up and about looking for randos to suck their blood. This made him say she was a shameless farm tool, as she already had an unlimited supply of blood since he had agreed to be her human blood bank. Nazuna argued that she'd done nothing wrong, and said it was normal for vampires to drink blood from anyone, so Ku backed off. He then told her how he searched around the city for her, and said he didn't want to do it again before proposing that they exchange contacts so he could call her the next time she went MIA. In response, Nazuna revealed that she didn't have a cell phone, which surprised him. When he asked why she didn't have one in this day and age, she told him it was because she preferred to communicate using carrier pigeons, a joke he didn't find funny. Eventually, she recalled that she had a phone, so they went to her apartment, and after she searched for God knows how long, she pulled out a cell phone which Ku was sure was older than his grandparents. He agreed it was still a cell phone, and asked her to carry it around everywhere she went so he could call her when he snuck out of the house. Nazuna told him that he couldn't pay her to log that heavy brick around and and also said she wouldn't get a new one because she was too old and dumb to figure out how they worked. She then laid down on her futon, saying she was exhausted from having to fly around looking for a snack, and invited Ku to join her. After he laid down beside her, he couldn't help but feel annoyed that she'd gone searching for someone else to suck blood from. His thoughts were interrupted when she asked if she could take a sip, so he told her that she couldn't. Nazuna asked why, and he explained that since he wasn't in love with her, it didn't make sense for her to take his blood, so she was free to go suck on someone else. As soon as he said this, he realized he sounded like a jealous simp, but refused to acknowledge it. Feeling guilty, Nazuna admitted that she'd also been looking for him earlier and had lied because she felt embarrassed. When she told him that it was hard to find someone with blood as tasty as his, Ku pulled his collar aside, exposing his neck, so she happily took a sip. Some nights later, as Ku sat on a swing on a playground, his mind wandered to when he received a love letter. Everyone else would have been happy to get a love confession, but Ku was an exception because the dense idiot didn't understand the concept of love, so he rejected the girl. Her friends had descended upon him after that, calling him a pathetic coward and saying they hoped his sausage shriveled up because he was dumb for rejecting their friend. After that incident, Ku lost interest in anything school-related and just stopped going altogether. A bit later, Nazuna showed in front of him. After she apologized, he showed her the watch he was wearing, and she asked what use it was to her. Ku explained that the watch was a transceiver, which got her excited, and made him feel proud that he'd thought about bringing it. He told her that they would use them to communicate, and she agreed, saying she didn't care as long as she could play with it. Ku tried to tell her they weren't playthings, but suddenly remembered that he used to buy transceivers as a kid, making her ask if he had any friends. Ku argued that he wasn't some unwanted loser, and told her that he hid one of the transceivers he bought as a kid somewhere it could be found. When he returned later, the transceiver was gone. However, he never received a call and didn't try calling the person either, because he was a wimp, so he put it away and forgot about it. Nazuna laughed after hearing his story and laughed even harder when she discovered he was wearing the old transceiver. Eventually she got tired, so Ku gave her the transceiver he bought and proposed that they do a test run, which she agreed to. Since the range was 150 meters, Nazuna flew away, and when she was 150 meters away, Ku called her on his transceiver. Nazuna answered, and after they talked about it for a while, Nazuna flew Ku around the city before landing on the roof of his school. Ku told her that he'd never been to school at night, and said it felt different, to which she responded that the night changed the way one perceived things. After she sucked his blood and commented on how naughty it was for them to do that on school grounds, it dawned on Ku that no matter how potty-mouthed Nazuna was, she always got embarrassed when talking about love and romance. This led him to believe that she was a clueless virgin like him, so he decided to tease her by referring to her as Nazuna-chan. As expected, she became embarrassed and told him to use San instead, as he wasn't that idiot simp of a cook. Ignoring her words, Ku asked if they could be friends, and she agreed even though she called him a loser for having no friends. Later, as Ku walked home, his old transceiver rang, surprising him, and before he could answer it, a girl standing behind him called out his name. From the way he looked at her, it was obvious they knew each other, but what he was interested in knowing was why she had the transceiver. The girl, whose name was Akira, answered that she'd kept it since he gave it to her years ago. At that point, Ku was certain the girl was delusional because he never gave the transceiver to her. Thankfully, she clarified things by explaining that he'd left the transceiver in her family's mailbox, but since she was unaware that it wasn't interventional, she believed he gave it to her. The reason she called that night was because she was worried about him, since he'd been skipping school. She hadn't even expected it to go through, but was surprised when she heard it ring as she was walking. Her words made Ku recall his elementary school days when a younger Akira had come to invite him to play with her and the other kids. Ku had turned down her invitation, saying he was fine where he was, as he was observing ants carrying dead insects to their colony. Instead of tagging him as a weirdo or a freak, Akira joined him to observe the ants, and since that day she'd considered him her friend. Back in the present, Ku asked Akira why she was dressed in her school uniform. She told him that she was on her way to school, explaining that she liked to leave home early and take walks before school began. Ku didn't know how to tell her that her behavior was strange, so he just told her that he was on his way home. Surprisingly, she didn't question him, and only asked that they meet again the following day at the same time, to which he said yes. A few nights later, after Nazuna had her fill of Ku's tasty blood, he told her that he was leaving. Nazuna teasingly asked if he was sneaking off to meet his other woman, and the stupid idiot awkwardly denied it. His response made Nazuna suspicious, but she said nothing, and allowed the two-timing jerk to leave. When he arrived, he was whizzing like a pig in serious need of a diet, but he assured Akira that he was as fit as a horse. After he calmed down, the two sat down and made small talk since they were still trying to rekindle their awkward friendship. As they conversed, Ku spotted Nazuna watching them from the shadows, and started panicking when she began to approach them. His first thought was that she was pissed off at him for lying. However, she surprised him by teasing him and Akira. Confused, Akira asked Ku if he knew Nazuna, and before he could respond, Nazuna told her that they were friends with benefits. Of course, this made her assume they worked out every time they met up, but an embarrassed Nazuna clarified that their relationship was far from a romantic one. To prove it to Akira, she made Ku stand up and bite his neck, even though he tried to make her stop by saying it was inappropriate for her to do it in front of Akira. Shocked, Akira demanded to know what kind of creature Nazuna was, despite her actions making it clear, so Nazuna spelt it out for her and said she was a vampire. She then took both of them to a bar, and after she ordered a beer and Akira ordered some breakfast, Akira asked Ku why he was allowing Nazuna to suck his blood. She also asked if this crazy arrangement was the reason he no longer came to school. Ku told her that he no longer came to school because he'd lost interest in it and saw it as an unwanted chore. Akira agreed that school was designed to suck the life out of a person, but said it was something they had to attend, and asked him to come to school with her. When Ku didn't respond, Nazuna spoke up and said Akira was an interesting person before she stormed out of the place without paying her bill. Confused as to why she acted that way, Ku apologized to Akira, paid Nazuna's bill, and chased after the angry vampire. When he caught up with her, he asked why she was angry, and she told him that she wasn't, but he didn't believe her. He kept pushing for her to tell him what got her panties in a twist, but that just made her angrier. She called him names that weren't suitable for the public, and they flew away, making him chase after her. Unfortunately, he lost sight of her, so he walked around hoping to find her. During his search, he tripped and fell, and as he cleaned himself up, his eyes went to his transceiver. Hoping she was in range, he called her, and after she picked up, he apologized to her for meeting Akira in secret, because he assumed that was why she was angry. Nazuna replied that she wasn't mad that he'd been sneaking around with the Melon Princess, but refused to reveal the reason behind her anger. Having zero knowledge of how to deal with angry women, Ku apologized again and told Nazuna that he wanted to make up with her. The next moment, she appeared on the railing of the bridge and explained that she was ticked off because he had hesitated to respond to Akira when she asked him to return to school with her. Ku told her that his hesitation was because he didn't know how to tell Akira that he didn't need school since he wanted to become a vampire. Understanding his plight, Nazuna didn't say anything, but when she noticed he had blood on his lips, she asked what happened. He said it was the result of the fall he had while searching for her, and she surprised him by kissing him so she could lick the blood, and reminds him how tasty his blood is for her. The following night, after Ku snuck out of his house, he found Nazuna sitting in the playground, supposedly waiting for him. However, since he still felt awkward about the kiss, he chose not to approach her, and decided to walk around like a nomad. Unfortunately, his mind was plagued by the kiss, and told himself that it wasn't something friends did. He wondered if his reaction to the kiss was an indication that he was finally in love with Nazuna, but before he could conclude, Nazuna showed up. She complained about him making her wait, but the boy ignored her complaints and asked her to bite him. Thinking nothing of his request, Nazuna bit him and drank his blood. He became excited, believing his life as a human was over. Unfortunately, when she pulled away, he didn't feel any different, so he asked Nazuna if he was now a vampire, and she told him no. Realizing why he'd assumed he was now a vampire, Nazuna explained that what he felt after their kiss was lust and not love. Ku became embarrassed after hearing that his first kiss gave him a stiffy, and blamed Nazuna for teasing him. Nazuna revealed that in all her years of living, he was the first person he'd kissed, and added that it was normal for friends to kiss. Meanwhile, Sleeping Beauty had just woken up from a restless slumber, and when she saw that it was still nighttime, she decided to go out. A little while after she left home, she ran into Ku, who invited her to hang out with him and Nazuna until morning, which she accepted. At Nazuna's place, she watched the almost lowly vampire and Ku play Street Fighter. When Ku lost, he complained and said she had the advantage because she'd played the game 1,000 times. Nazuna just laughed and said he lost because he was bad at games, and asked Akira if she wanted to play against her. She told her that if she won, she'd kiss her, but Akira turned down her offer, even though she wondered if it was common practice for Ku and Nazuna to kiss during their games. Somehow, Nazuna deduced what she was thinking, and told Akira that she and Ku often kissed but without conditions. Shocked by her words, Akira told Ku that inasmuch as she supported his decision to stay away from school, she was struggling to support his decision to be with Dracula's long-lost daughter. Nazuna assured them that Ku's reasons for hanging out with her weren't romantic, and then set up a new game which she played as they watched. Sometime later, Nazuna told Ku that she was ready for her night snack, surprising Akira when she mentioned that it was time to sleep. Ku tried and failed to explain that the only thing they did was sleep. Nazuna also made it worse when she blurted out that with Akira around, they could run a train with Ku in the middle. As the trio lay on the futon, Akira felt embarrassed and decided that she'd leave, but Nazuna told her that she couldn't since it was raining. Having no choice, she settled back beside Ku, and had to watch as Nazuna helped herself to Ku's blood. Ku's protests were ignored, as Nazuna thought it was a great idea to tease him in front of his friend. Akira then asked what the deal with blood-sucking was, and Nazuna explained it as a demand and supply situation. Still confused, Akira asked why Ku was willing to let Nazuna suck his blood, and he had no choice but to tell her about his quest to become a creature of the night. Surprised, Akira said it was the first time she'd heard him talk about what he wanted to do with his future. She then asked why he wasn't a vampire yet, and he explained the condition to become one. Nazuna became visibly embarrassed while he spoke, so he also had to explain why that was. Feeling embarrassed enough, Nazuna told them to go to sleep, so they all lay down again. Ku felt bad about keeping her there, so he apologized for dragging her into his crazy nightlife. He explained that he'd invited her that night because he wanted her to see that he was doing all right and that she didn't have to worry about him anymore. She asked if he was truly having fun, and he confirmed that he was, so she didn't ask any follow-up questions. She soon noticed that his arms were folded on his chest because he was trying not to touch her, so she told him to relax and put them down. After he did what she asked, she told him that even if he became a blood-sucking vampire, she would still be friends with him. She also told him that she wouldn't stop trying to make him return to school because even vampires needed knowledge. Once she'd finished telling him her mind, she turned around and ended up falling asleep despite not wanting to. Some days later, Nazuna woke up from a nap, and after watching television for a while, she got bored and decided to explore the city like Dora. As she walked about, she noted that everyone she passed looked glum, and wondered if they were all competing to be crowned the next Lord of Glum and Doom. Walking past a bench, she spotted a cat and decided to play with it because it looked cute. Unfortunately, when she touched it, she discovered that the cat smelled worse than a garbage dump. Since the smell got on her hand, she decided to go to a bathhouse to get cleaned up. At the bathhouse, she gave her watch to the front desk person and asked him to let her know when the watch beeped. After leaving this instruction with him, she went to take her bath and got a little annoyed when she couldn't see her reflection in the mirror. She didn't like that she got stuck with the stupid cliché of vampires not having reflections and secretly cursed the plot gods for her faith. Outside the bath, her watch beeped, and the desk boy was just about to come get her when she rushed out and swapped the watch from him. Shortly after, she met Ku, and he noted that her appearance was different because she'd left her hair down. Nazuna explained that she'd taken a bath at the bathhouse to pass the time, and as soon as he heard those words, he announced that he also wanted to take one. Nazuna told him she'd go with him because she wanted to finish her bath, which she cut short. About half an hour later, they were done with their baths, and Nazuna helped herself to Ku's blood. However, she was unusually thirsty and sucked him to the point where he felt weak. When she detached herself from him, he told her that he needed to rest, and as luck would have it, he spotted a rest stop nearby. He suggested going there for a short while to recover, and Nazuna readily agreed to accompany him. It wasn't until they got a room that he realized that the place was a love motel and felt embarrassed. Nazuna, on the other hand, was unbothered by this because she was happily jumping on the bed like a kid high on sugar. All this while, Ku was lost in thought. So Nazuna brought him back to earth by asking if he was alright. She told him that she got a hint of the inappropriate thoughts running around in his head while she was feeding off him. Before he could respond, she asked if her post-bath looks had gotten him excited and confused him again, and he assured her that he now knew that lust was different from love. Later, as they stood on the street watching people, Ku wondered how many people Nazuna had sucked blood from for her to know which one tasted better. However, he decided he didn't want to know what her body count was. The next moment, Nazuna saw someone she used to suck blood from drew Ku's attention to him. Surprised by this, Ku told her that her action was insensitive, and that was when Nazuna realized he was jealous. She tried to reassure him by saying she also sucked blood from women, and added that since she met him, he'd been the only one. This prompted him to ask if she had someone like him before, who she constantly sucked blood from, and she confirmed that she didn't, making him ask if she lured them to her place under the guise of a good clapping time. Nazuna told him not to compare her with a red light district employee and said she used to work as a professional cuddler. It turned out that she put on a nurse's uniform and offered cuddling services to those she brought home. Ku pointed out that it was still the same as providing naughty services, but the stubborn vampire insisted it wasn't, and showed him her price list, asking which service he wanted. She told him he didn't have to pay for it since he was poorer than a sewer rat, so he chose the massage course. When she finished the massage, she tried to help herself to some of his blood, but the doorbell rang, halting her plans. From the peephole, she saw that it was a customer, seeking her cuddle services, so she begged Ku to attend to her because she was too tired to give another massage course. Ku answered the door, and since he was pretending to be an employee of Nazuna, he told the woman that his boss was resting. However, he invited her and asked her to wait in Nazuna's room. He then went to find Nazuna, who to his surprise was playing video games, and when he complained, she told him not to get his panties in a twist. She said it would be good for him to attend to the customer, because he would get the chance to touch a woman for the first time in his life. According to her, the woman's name was Kiyosumi, and she was an overworked office worker who desperately needed the massage service. Annoyed by her insinuation, Ko scolded Nazuna and advised her to shut down her shame of a business. He then told her that if she wasn't going to attend to the customer herself, he would ask the woman to leave, and she told him not to do so, explaining that she needed the money as it was through this job that she made a living. However, since she'd been spending most of her nights with him, she hadn't worked in a while and had no money. Ko said it didn't concern him, so she humbled herself and begged him to attend to the customer, promising to compensate with the sum of 2,000 yen. To convince him further, she told him that she would reward him with a kiss, so he agreed. Shortly after, he returned to the room where Kiyosumi was waiting, dressed in a male nurse's outfit, and told her that he'd be the one to give her the massage. Kiyosumi was shocked by his sudden change in behavior from timid to cocky, and wondered if it was a good idea to let him do it. In the end, she allowed him, and while Ku was giving her the massage, all he could think about was the money and kiss Nazuna would give him once he was done. Just as he was trying to convince himself that he wasn't interested in either of those things, Kiyosumi asked why he was working there, and he told her it was because he needed the money. He explained that he dropped out of school, and since he had trouble sleeping at night, he began going out and came to love the feeling the nightlife gave him. Kiyosumi told him that she could relate to that feeling because she felt the same way when she was younger and had gone out to buy something. Additionally, she said she wished she could enjoy that feeling once again, and revealed that she felt tired of her work. She said it was fun, but what she hated was the fact that she had to work with others to get it done. And worst of all, she had to pretend like she liked them and was having fun with them. Suddenly, she began to cry and said she didn't want to return to work the next day because she couldn't take it anymore. Ku didn't know how to console her, but thankfully her phone stopped her seemingly endless sobbing. Without looking at the phone, Kiyosumi knew it was her boss calling, so she told Ku that she had to return to the office, which surprised him, as he knew it was past closing hours. Kiyosumi explained that it was common for her to get called back to the office at ridiculous hours, and said that if she refused to go, she'd get in trouble. Realizing that if she left then, he wouldn't get paid in full. Ku tried to think of a way to make Ryosumi stay. However, when it dawned on him that she was a bored and tired soul just like him, he stood in front of the door and declared that she wouldn't leave. He told her that she would finish her massage and sleep peacefully like she was meant to. Ryosumi tried to reason with him, but he cut her off and called out to Nazuna, who materialized from the wall like a ghost and asked why he was blocking the door. Ignoring Ryosumi's shock and Nazuna's question, Ku told Nazuna not to allow Ryosumi to return to work. Nazuna asked why, but he screamed at her to just do as he asked, so she told him to open the window, and as soon as he did, she threw Ryosumi out of it. As the confused woman fell, she wondered if she would die, but Ku came after her, and as he grabbed onto her, Nazuna came and saved them both. On the ground, Ku apologized for what happened, explaining that he'd done what he did because he didn't want her to leave. He said that if something was so bad that a person cried because of it, it made sense that they shouldn't have to do it. In response, Kiyosumi told him that school and work were two different ballgames because as an adult, you couldn't just leave when things got tough or unbearable. Nazuna tried to say something, but Ku asked her not to, and then revealed to Ryosumi that he wanted to become a vampire. He explained that Nazuna was a vampire and said that she was the one who would turn him into a vampire when the time was right. During his rant, she laughed and told Ku that his reason for becoming a vampire was stupid. Ku agreed that it might be, but said he still wouldn't give up on his dream. Since he'd walked to the middle of the street, Kiyosumi joined him and said she could recall the feeling she got back then when she experienced the nightlife. Unfortunately, she couldn't enjoy it because she had responsibilities, one of which was her work, which she had to return to. Before leaving, she wished Ko good luck with his endeavor and said she also wished she could become a vampire. Ko promised that once he became a vampire, he would turn her, shocking Nazuna, who hadn't expected him to make such a bold statement. A few days later, Ku and Nazuna went to a nighttime pool, and while waiting by the pool for Nazuna, Ku caught himself staring at the women in their swimsuits and tried to imagine what Nazuna's swimsuit would look like. Just then, Nazuna showed up wearing normal clothes, and when he asked where her swimsuit was, she told him it was underneath her clothes. She then excused herself to get a drink, and after she walked away, Ku wondered to himself why seeing her in that attire was more arousing than usual. He soon learned that he wasn't the only one who thought Nazuna looked hot in her outfit, because he overheard two guys loudly discussing her looks. On her way back, two other guys tried to hit on Nazuna, and she turned them down saying she was with someone. However, when she noticed Ku watching them, she told the guys she'd go with them just to tease him. The next moment, Ku showed up and dragged her away like a jealous boyfriend. Since he wasn't in the mood, they left the pool, and as they walked him, Nazuna asked if he was upset with her. He told her that he was upset with the people who talked about her and those who tried to hit on her. Instead of teasing him for being jealous, Nazuna asked if he was still interested in swimming and then grabbed him as she took off flying. From the sky, she showed him his school's pool and let go of him. After he landed in the water, she joined him, and he commented on how scary it was to fall from that height, but Nazuna told him it was a fun experience. She then apologized for teasing him, but Ku assured her that all was forgiven, so she proceeded to suck his blood. Days later, Ku rushed to find cover when it suddenly started raining, and as he stood there, he noticed a girl getting hit on. The girl turned the guy down and then waved at Ku, which surprised him, but his surprise doubled when the girl came over to speak to him. She asked what he'd thought of the random sleazebag who'd been asking her out, and let Ku understand that he'd offered her money just to get her to say yes to him. Ku asked if she'd been annoyed by the man's offer, and she told him no, adding that she'd actually been waiting to get hit on. According to her, she usually did it when she got bored. However, she never said yes to just anyone. Instead of wondering why she was telling him all this, Ku just assumed she was like him, a fellow lover of the night, enjoying it in her weird way. When the girl began walking away, he followed her, and she told him that she'd been feeling unsatisfied with life lately, prompting Ku to see her as a kindred spirit. He assured her that everything would be fine, and the girl hugged him to thank him. However, she surprised Ku by saying his name. And not just that, it was revealed she was a vampire. Just as she was about to bite him, Nazuna swooped in like Superman and cut the girl's arm, telling her to back off from her prey. As the girl reattached her arm, she told Nazuna that she was curious about her boy toy, since everyone had been talking about it. She said Nazuna had to turn him, and if she didn't do that, she would have to send him on his merry way to the afterlife, since he knew their secret. The next moment she charged at Ku, but Nazuna got in the way, and as both girls battled it out, another girl showed up and grabbed Ku. She called out to Nazuna and told her that they were going to borrow her boy and then flew away with him. Annoyed, Nazuna kicked girl number 1 and demanded to know where girl number 2 had taken Ku. Meanwhile, girl number 2 and Ku arrived at a place where 3 girls were waiting, and when they saw Ku, they commented on how young he was. They then asked Ku to choose one of them, saying that whoever he picked would turn him into a vampire and that way he would get to live. One of the girls then introduced herself as Nico and introduced the others as Midori, Hatsuka, and Kabura, the one who had kidnapped him. She told him that girl number 1 was named Siri and let him know that if he preferred her, he could choose her to be his sire. Ku expressed his desire to be turned by Nazuna, surprising them as they all knew her to be anti-romantic. Ignoring what he said, Midori and Nico began arguing over who was the best candidate to turn Ku. Elsewhere, Sari told Nazuna that if she didn't turn Ko into a vampire, he would be at risk, and she assured her that she would turn him. Sari didn't believe her, and assumed she'd only said that to keep them away from Ko. She then informed her that if she didn't do it, they would do it themselves, and if they couldn't, they would get rid of him. Back where Ko was, Midori sat next to him and asked if she was his type, to which he responded that she wasn't. He explained that he didn't understand the concept of feelings, so he couldn't be completely sure what his type was. The girls then told him that if he didn't pick one of them to turn him, they would have to get rid of him because he was a potential risk. Ko assured them that he wished to turn, and he wanted Nazuna to do it, so he was trying to fall in love with her. The next moment, Nazuna arrived and tried to leave with Ko, but the girls refused to let them go until she told them how she intended to make Ko fall in love with her. Kabura said she could bet all her money that Nazuna didn't have a plan, since she had never once tried to create an offspring before. Since she was curious to find out why Ko was special to Nazuna, she invited him to come hang out with her sometime. Hearing this, Nazuna threatened to stake her if she didn't stay away from her prey, but Nico stepped in. She asked Nazuna to calm her knick-knack racks and explained that only wanted to know why Ko was special to her. Ko answered that it was because Nazuna found his blood tasty, and since he wanted to become a vampire, they agreed to help each other out. Despite hearing this, Midori said they didn't trust that Nazuna would keep her end of the bargain, because she was against the idea of making offspring. Ku responded this time around and made it clear that she'd told Ku that he was allowed to fall in love with her if he so wished. Nico laughed at this and told the unlikely pair that they wouldn't interfere with them again. However, they warned that if it took too long, they would make their move. Ku assured them that they would not have to worry because he would become a vampire by all means necessary, even if it took years. The girls were surprised by his declaration, and when he noticed this, he asked why, so they told him that there was a time limit. Nico explained that a person had 1 year from the first time they got bitten to turn into a vampire, otherwise they would never turn. Shocked by this revelation, Ku turned to face Nazuna, and she casually told him that she'd forgotten to tell him that bit. A little while later, while the girls were having fun, Nazuna suddenly remembered she had yet to give Ku his reward for the massage he gave Kiyosumi. Before Ku could react, she kissed him, surprising everyone, and when she was done, she left with him, acting like she'd done nothing wrong. In the morning, when Akira arrived at school, she bumped into a boy named Mahiru, who was sleeping at the top of the stairs. Mahiru apologized for blocking the way and explained that he'd fallen asleep on the stairs after he had a fun night out. Akira asked why he'd spent the night out, and the boy admitted it was because of the person he liked, stating that the person could only spend time with him at night. The first thought that came to Akira's mind after she heard this was that the boy had gotten himself a sugar mommy. However, she hoped that the so-called MILF wasn't a vampire, and when she asked Mahiru about it, he didn't know what she was talking about. Ignoring her strange question, he asked if Ku would come to school that day, and she answered that he wouldn't. Dropping the topic, they walked to their classes together, and before Mahiru parted ways with Akira, he asked her to let Ka know that he was worried about him. Akira then walked to her class, and when she got there, she recalled the day she and Ka were watching ants do their thing. Mahiru had tried to join them, but because he wasn't that interested in the ants, he invited Ka to play basketball with them. Khan turned down the offer, saying he didn't know how to play, but Mahiru was persistent and promised to teach him the basics. Later at night, Khan tried to act like he didn't know Suri when the girl approached him, but his attempt to run was foiled when she caught him. She told him that she'd heard from the others that his blood was tasty and wanted to know if it was true, which terrified him even more. Eventually, Ku calmed down, and as he and Sari stood talking, he told her that he didn't know how to go about falling in love. Realizing he was asking for love advice made Sari excited, and the self-proclaimed Cupid assured him that she knew the best way for a guy and a girl to get closer. Shortly after this, Ku went to Nazuna's place to invite her out on a date, but she turned him down, opting to play video games instead. To get her attention, he turned off her game, which annoyed Nazuna, but he told her that she could continue it later, and Nazuna had no choice but to accept, even though she was still annoyed. They went to the movies, but Nazuna's annoyance skyrocketed because Ku had chosen a rom-com movie, so when she complained, he apologized and they left. Following the plan Sari wrote down for him, he took Nazuna to a cafe. He tried talking about the movie they watched, prompting Nazuna to ask if someone had sold this ridiculous date idea to him. Ku recalled Sari warning him not to tell Nazuna that she was the one who gave him the idea because Nazuna hated her. Just then, Nazuna noticed the piece of paper, and after she took it from him and read it, she realized that Sari was behind it all. However, she decided to go home instead of starting an argument because she found the entire thing boring. Later on, after gaming for a while, Nazuna got hungry, and when she spotted the list she'd taken from Ku, she went looking for him. When she found him at home, she asked if he was interested in doing the last part of the list, which was a dinner date overlooking the city. As they flew over the city, she told him that she didn't understand the concept of dates. However, she wanted them to do the things they always did, because she thought they were fun. Days later, as Ku walked around looking for Nazuna, he ran into Mahiru, so they went to the playground to talk. As both boys talked, Akira showed up, and as they were talking, she informed Mahiru that the reason Ku had been skipping school was because he'd been fooling around with a girl. She asked Mahiru to talk some sense into Ku and convince him to return to school, but all Mahiru asked Ku was if he had a fun time with the girl. Just as Ku confirmed that he did, Mahiru received a message, and after reading it, he told them he had to leave. Once they were alone, Ku said something, and Akira told him that he always acted like a BTS fangirl whenever Mahiru was around. Ku replied that anyone would fangirl over Mahiru because he was the perfect role model. This prompted Akira to recall her conversation with Mahiru about his crush, but she kept quiet. She then told Ku she wanted to go back home and rest, so they bid each other farewell and went their separate ways. Another night, Siri saw Ku walking on the road, so she rushed to hug him, But before she could reach him, Nazuna appeared out of nowhere and introduced Siri's face to her knee. Shocked, Ku scolded Nazuna for going full WWE superstar on Siri, but she ignored him and asked if Siri had hurt him. Ku told her that she hadn't, and pointed out that she couldn't have because of what she did to her a few seconds ago. Nazuna said it wasn't her fault, and said her legs acted on their own because she hated Siri. Just then, Siri stood up and both girls began dirty fighting right there, not caring about anything else at that moment. When they were done, Siri told Nazuna that unlike what she believed, she had no intention of harming Ku. But Nazuna didn't believe her. She asked why she wanted to get close to Ku, and Siri answered that there wasn't anything wrong with befriending a human. However, after having a rethink, she told them that she only wanted to mess with Ku and now she was leaving. As she walked away, she received a message from a guy she'd been ignoring and became annoyed. Ku ran up to her at that moment and asked if there was anything she wanted to talk about, because he recalled she'd told him that things hadn't been fun as of late. Siri answered that she'd lied about that, but Ku didn't believe her, and when he kept pushing, she invited him to a karaoke. There, Siri got annoyed because Ku didn't join her to sing the song she chose, so he explained that he was unfamiliar with the song. She then asked him to choose a song, so he did, and as he sang, someone began knocking on their door aggressively. Ku assumed he'd gotten the wrong room, but when the banging intensified and the guy began calling Siri's name, he realized it wasn't a mistake. Siri explained that her popularity among guys often made her a victim of occasional harassment. However, she assured Ku that the guy didn't have the guts to force his way in, and proved it by calling the guy out. Immediately, he backed off, and Ku asked Siri what she intended to do if the harassment continued. She told him that she could easily get rid of the guys if she wanted to, and Ku said it was arrogant of her to casually talk about murder. Siri argued that humans were hypocrites because they never batted an eye when a person died, but were against murder. When Ku tried to explain that she could sort things out with her stalker by talking to him, the guy entered the room. One look at him and Ku realized that he couldn't be reasoned with, so Siri said it was okay to get rid of him. She charged at the guy, but Ku tackled him out of the room like a pro linebacker and asked him to run when Siri threatened to hurt him for interfering with her. After they escaped the psycho vampire, the guy asked Ku who he was to Siri, making Ku realize that he had feelings for Siri. Hoping to help the guy, he asked him to tell him about his feelings for Siri and how the two of them met. The guy said Siri had invited them to have drinks with her after helping him find his glasses which he'd lost. He told Ku that Siri probably spoke to him that day out of pity, however he was glad that he did. He admitted that even though they weren't a couple, he often found himself longing to be in her presence because he liked the way she made him feel. His longing soon turned to jealousy over who she was spending time with, so he started sending her messages all the time. The guy was still telling his story when Siri showed up and declared that she would end the guy's life, but Ku told her not to. When she charged at them, Nazuna showed up out of nowhere and stopped her. It turned out that she'd been listening to their conversation the entire time through the transceiver. Siri tried to get Nazuna to release her by promising not to hurt Ku, but Nazuna refused and asked why she was attempting to murder someone for the first time. Siri revealed that it was because she didn't want to turn the guy into an offspring, adding that all she wanted was a friend who she could talk to, but he fell in love with her. As Ku listened, he became annoyed by how Siri handled the situation. He thought it was selfish of her to want to end the guy's life because he fell in love with her and proposed that she explain things to him properly. Taking Ku's suggestion, Siri told the guy that she was a vampire, and explained that humans and vampires couldn't be friends because it never worked out. She then told him that they couldn't see each other anymore. But as she spoke, she started crying and admitted she didn't want to end their friendship, because they always had fun. The guy told her that he also felt the same and asked if she would turn him into a vampire so they could remain friends. As Ku watched them, he became jealous because he also wanted to fall in love with Nazuna so he could become a vampire. Nazuna seemed to sense what he was thinking, so she told him not to worry, and said there was nothing wrong with them taking things slowly. Days later, Midori roped Nazuna into working part-time at her job after her coworker sent a message saying she couldn't come to work. To help Nazuna get familiar with working at the cafe, Midori proposed that they practice and asked Ku to act as the customer. When Ku entered the cafe, Midori welcomed him, addressing him as master, but when Nazuna tried to welcome him, she forgot her lines. This annoyed Midori, causing her to break character in front of the other customers. She told Nazuna to take her role seriously and not ruin things for her, but Nazuna tuned her out until she heard that she would get paid for the job. Immediately, she decided to buckle up and do better, but she was still bad at it. Midori soon left her and went to attend to a customer, acting all cute so the man complimented her. Another maid, who introduced herself as Rizz, took Ku's order to him, and while they were discussing, Ku informed her that he was only there because of Midori. At first, she assumed it was because he liked her, but he told her that it wasn't the case. After work, Midori discovered that someone had taken and posted inappropriate photos of the maids on social media. Ku zoomed in on the pictures while looking at them, and then informed the girls that all the pictures that were posted were of Rizz. Surprised, Midori asked how he could tell when the face of the person wasn't showing, and he said it was because of the way Rizz wore her uniform. Impressed by his little Sherlock Holmes display, Midori told him that she needed his help to catch the culprit and he agreed. The following day, Ku was at the cafe looking at the pictures again to see if he could find more clues. He noticed that one of the pictures was taken while Aratas was changing and wondered how it was possible. Just then, Aratas came in and told him that she needed to get changed, so he apologized for intruding into her space and quickly left the room. Outside, he spotted a door leading to the balcony and discovered that it was locked, but still believed the culprit had stood on the balcony to take those pictures of Arata changing. Since Nazuna was on a break, he went outside with her and tried to survey the area to see if it was possible to climb up to the balcony. He asked Nazuna to get him to the balcony, and after she did, he inspected the place. Just then, Arata opened the window and was surprised to see them standing on the balcony. Nazuna explained that they were investigating the picture case and asked her to go back to what she was doing. After Arata left the room, Ku took pictures of the room but pointed out to Nazuna that something was off about them. Nazuna then volunteered to go in and stand there so he could take photos of her and compare them to the original ones. Unfortunately, none of the photos he took matched the original one, so he tried to think of what he was missing. Eventually, something clicked in his mind and he asked Nazuna to tell Midori to meet there after work. Later, Midori came in, excited that Ku had found the culprit, but when they heard footsteps approaching, he asked her to hide inside a locker. Before joining Midori there, he told Nazuna to do what they discussed earlier, and shortly after he was locked in with Midori, they heard Aratas walk in. Nazuna informed her that she was heading home and said everyone else had left, so Aratas was all alone. It was then that Ku explained to Midori that whoever was taking pictures of Arata did it when they knew she was alone, so he came up with this plan to catch them. The next moment, they heard the window opening, so Ku popped the locker door open and saw Aratas preparing to take a selfie. He apologized for intruding but asked why she'd taken photos of herself and posted them online. Surprised, Midori asked how Ku had figured it out, and he explained that it was because the pictures were too good. According to him, if the aim had been to just have photos of Arata's underwear, the person wouldn't have taken their time to capture the moments. Additionally, there were no pictures taken from under her skirt, which was strange because everyone knew that it was usually the first thing a peeping Tom would take photos of. The only thing he couldn't figure out was why Arata was taking and posting those photos, so Midori told him it was an obvious guess. She said Arata was angry that she'd stolen her spot as number one, so she came up with a bizarre way to make it seem like she was still popular. Feeling embarrassed by the whole thing, Arata told them that she would quit, but Midori told her she didn't have to. She helped her understand that she wasn't the first person to do something like that, and explained that everyone working at the cafe also wished to be recognized. With that, the issue was resolved, and after Nazuna got paid, she decided to pick up a few more shifts because she liked the money. Sometime later, Nazuna decided it was time to improve the quality of her cuddle buddy business. Of course, Ku got roped into it, and she sent him out to find her new customers. His targets were people who looked tired and overworked, and as he walked around, he noticed a woman who cut the description, smoking a cigarette on a bridge. Hoping to bag her as a new customer, he approached her and asked if she wanted to chat for a bit, to which she said yes. They went to a coffee shop, and while there, Ku told her that he hadn't approached her to try and rizz her up. He explained that he worked part-time at an establishment which offered cuddling services to tired people. Upon hearing this, the woman told him that under labor laws it was illegal for someone his age to work nights, and said she would report his boss for breaking the law. Immediately, Ku panicked, but the woman confessed that she was joking and advised him to be careful about who he approached. She also said that she didn't enjoy cuddling, so he told her about the massage course which piqued her interest. She gave Ku her business card, and from it, he learned that her name was Anko, and she was a private detective. Fishing for information, she asked Ku if he was familiar with a person named Akihito Akiyama, and showed him a picture to jog his memory. Ku immediately recognized the person as Siri's new offspring. However, he told Anko he didn't know him. Unfortunately for him, the woman noticed he was a bit nervous, so she pulled him towards her and asked if he truly didn't know Akihito. Ku swore he didn't, so she checked his pulse to see if he was lying or not, and when she got her answer, she let him go. She paid for the drinks but left some extra money for Ku, asking him to call her if he heard anything about Akihito. The next day, Mahiru, Ku, and Akira snuck into school because Mahiru wanted them to have fun together like the old days. As they walked around the place, Mahiru told them about the legend of the King Fu Panda. The legend of the 7 school mysteries. The most famous one was of Hanako-san, who was believed to be haunting the bathroom. So Mahiru made Akira go into the bathroom to confirm if it was true. Akira tried summoning Hanako and freaked out when Mahiru responded to her calls using a female voice. After the bathroom incident, the trio moved on to verify other mysteries and had fun while doing it. The final mystery involved a teacher who was believed to have appeared at the school every night after he disappeared from school years ago. Ku and Akira didn't believe the story, but Mahiru convinced them to accompany him to verify it. When they got to the classroom the man was said to have disappeared from, they found a man standing in the middle of it. After asking why they were at the school so late at night, the man suddenly jumped on Akira. Mahiru quickly sprung into action trying to pull the man off Akira, but Ku remained as motionless as a statue. This was because he figured out that the man was a vampire, Eventually, he moved and hit the man with a chair, forcing him to release Akira, so the man warned them to run before things got ugly. The next moment, Anko showed up and offered the man her neck, so he rushed to bite her, only to pull away moments later, saying she tasted bad. Anko then said she'd been searching for him for 10 years, and after having him suck her blood, she was certain that he'd never once fed properly, since he turned into a vampire. Ko asked why that was, and Anko answered that it was because he didn't wish to become a vampire. The man confirmed her words, saying he'd been tricked into becoming one. After hearing this, Anko promised to let him die as a human, before forcing a silver ring into his hand and telling him not to let go. As she spoke, the sun rose and the man turned to dust before their eyes, so she told the kids that the missing teacher from 10 years ago was now dead. She then introduced herself to Mahiru and Akira, after which she informed the trio that her job was to investigate cases where people went missing because of vampires. Ku asked why she'd let the teacher die, and she answered that it was because he didn't want to live that way. She said he'd struggled for 10 years not knowing or understanding what he was, so it was only right to let him die with his humanity still intact. She assured Ku that he knew nothing about vampires and said she wouldn't allow him to achieve his stupid dream of becoming a vampire. That night, when Ku visited Nazuna, she hugged him and helped herself to his blood. But this action reminded him of the teacher, so he pushed her away. Confused, Nazuna asked what the problem was, so he told her about the teacher and how he lost control of his blood urges. Nazuna told him that the man lost control because he was starving, so he asked if she'd ever lost control before. She confirmed that she hadn't, and promised that he'd never had to worry about her losing control. To help take his mind off things, Nazuna suggested that they go for a walk, and as they did, she told him that she'd heard stories of vampires dying naturally after 10 years if they didn't drink blood. Ku then told her about Anko's promise to stop him from becoming a vampire, and said that what worried him was the fact that the woman knew how to slay vampires. This put Nazuna at risk, and he didn't want anything to happen to her because of him. He apologized for pushing her away earlier, saying that the incident had made him see how dangerous vampires could be. Later, when he met Mahiru, the boy asked why he wanted to become a vampire, and that made him think. He wondered if he'd deluded himself into believing that becoming a vampire meant he'd be truly free. He was distracted from his thoughts by Mahiru, who asked if he'd also trick people and suck their blood the same way the vampire who tricked the teacher, or if he'd refuse to drink blood and eventually lose control. When he didn't respond, Mahiru asked him to think about his decision carefully, and be sure it was what he wanted. When he returned to Nazuna, he hugged her and pleaded with her to tell him what he was thinking at that moment, but she didn't. Instead, she asked him to take her to his place, and when they arrived, the first thing the dirty-minded vampire did was search his room for adult magazines. When she gave up on her search, she sat on the bed and asked where his parents were, so he explained that his mother was at work, while his father hadn't stepped foot in the house since their divorce. Satisfied with the answer, she asked if he'd reconsidered his decision to become a vampire, since it was clear from his behavior that he was having doubts. Ku answered that Mahiru had asked why he wanted to become a vampire, and after thinking about it, he'd realized it was because he liked the night. However, he'd learned that the night could also be dangerous, and he didn't want to do anything that would hurt his friends in the long run. He tried playing it cool by saying he was already having fun with her as a human, but when he mentioned that she wasn't in a rush to turn him into a vampire, he noticed Nazuna's expression was different. She then asked why he loved the night, and he answered that it was because of the freedom it offered. Nazuna agreed with his reason but said it was because it was different from his everyday life and asked if he still felt the same thrill that he felt on his first night out. She asked this because she wanted him to understand that not everything lasted forever, and at some point something which felt out of the ordinary would become boring. In other words, if he chose to become a vampire, he would get bored of the lifestyle because the thrill of it would fade away. Using herself as an example, she told him that it had been decades since she became a vampire and she was already bored of it. Ku asked why she only showed him the fun parts, and she answered that it was because it was what she wanted to be. After Nazuna left, Ku called Anko, and when they met, he asked why she was against him becoming a vampire. She answered that it was because vampires were evil, and shouldn't exist in a world where humans were already causing harm to each other. She then asked if he would be okay drinking blood after he turned into a vampire, which left him speechless. Seeing this, she told him that she didn't think he would become a vampire because, from her observation of him, he lacked romantic urges. Anko told him that he had only two options: remain a human and get murdered by the other vampires because he knew their secret, or become a vampire and die at her hands. She told him that if he chose the first option, she would protect him from the vampires, but Ku argued that not all vampires were evil. Taking this as his answer, she called the cops and reported that she'd noticed a young boy walking around at night and said she was worried for his safety. When she hung up the phone, she advised Ku to run home, and that's what he did. As he ran, he became annoyed that he didn't get to ask her about how she slayed vampires, how she learned of them in the first place, or why her blood tasted awful. Ku only stopped running when he heard the sound of the police sirens and spotted the cars. Terrified, he ran to hide in the playground, and as he tried to figure out if he should go to Nazuna's place, Hatsuka found him. She took Ku to her place, and when they arrived, 3 excited adults rushed to welcome her, which surprised Ku. Hatsuka dismissed them, saying she had a guest, and when she went to take a shower, Ku sat in the living room, wondering if the 3 people he saw were her offspring. He also tried to figure out what kind of vampire she was because compared to the others he'd met, Hatsuka seemed different. His thoughts were interrupted by Hatsuka, who asked him to bring a towel because she forgot to bring one. Seeing Hatsuka nude shocked Ku because all this while, he believed he was a girl. After Hatsuka got dressed, he told Ku that he'd assumed Nazuna had told him about his real identity, and Ku explained that Nazuna was an airhead who always forgot important details. Meanwhile, Nazuna met with Nico, Midori, and Sari to speak to them about Ku. She asked that they leave him alone, stating that even though he didn't become a vampire, he still deserved to live. Hearing this, Nico smashed the table and told Nazuna that it was obvious she came prepared to face the consequences. But it was pointless as they weren't allowed to murder one another. She said the only way to get even was to get rid of Ku, but Nazuna told her that if she did that, she would send her to Hades herself. Nico reminded her that she was asking them for a favor, so it would be advisable for her not to throw threats around. She asked Nazuna what Ku was to her, and asked why he was so different from the other humans she'd taken blood from. Back at Hatsuka's apartment, Ku told him he wasn't sure he wanted to become a vampire, shocking the boy who had been rooting for him. Ku explained that his indecision was because of what he witnessed Anko doing to the vampire who lost control and the things the vampire hunter told him. Hatsuka explained that there was much that vampires didn't know about themselves, as most of what they knew was coincidental. He also said they didn't know why some people's blood tasted good while others tasted bad. However, he was curious to know if Ku's blood tasted as good as Nazuna said it did. When he moved to take a bite, Ku freaked out, so he told him to pretend he was a girl and allow him to suck his blood. Unfortunately, that made Ku freak out even more, and he asked why Hatsuka dressed like a girl. Hatsuka said it was because he looked good that way, and added that both men and women were usually drawn to him. Curious, Ku asked Hatsuka if he'd felt conflicted before he turned into a vampire, but the boy didn't get to respond because his phone beeped. Pulling it out of his pocket, he saw it was a message with a picture of the table Nico broke. She showed it to Ku and asked if he understood the consequences of not becoming a vampire, to which he said yes. Hatsuka told him that there wasn't a strict rule which stated that he had to die. However, there would be consequences for him and Nazuna if he remained a human. Unfortunately, Nazuna would suffer more, so he proposed that Ku become his offspring, so that Nazuna would be spared, but Ku declined his offer. Hatsuka reminded him that Nico was angry, and asked if he was prepared to face the consequences. Ku admitted that he wasn't, but said he'd figure it out because he didn't want Nazuna to be bored. He then left to where Nazuna was, but when he arrived, Nico informed him that Nazuna had left already, which made him feel relieved. Seeing his reaction, Nico told him not to be like that because she doubted that Nazuna would be able to speak to him for a while. Ku tried to leave and look for Nazuna, but Nico told him not to bother because Nazuna didn't want to see him. Annoyed, Ku told Nico to shut up, and said that even though Nazuna didn't want to see him, he wanted to see her. On his way to Nazuna, he encountered the police and had to jump off the bridge to avoid getting caught by them. Meanwhile, Nazuna stopped at a vending machine to buy booze so she could drink away the thoughts that were plaguing her mind. When Ku found her, he asked if she was okay, and she assured him that she was, but turned to walk away. To keep her there, Ku told her that until he met her, he'd lived a boring life and asked if she felt the same, to which she responded that she did. Excitedly, Ku grabbed Nazuna and promised that he would do everything to ensure that she would never be bored again. Without thinking, he asked her to stay with him, and when she turned red, he apologized for being impulsive and pulled away. With his back to her, he told her he was glad she was unharmed, and before he could say more, she pulled him to her and kissed him. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by commenting Dracula. Don't forget to check out the next video.